Sometimes even the most ordinary things can turn deadly, despite the fact that we use them without a second thought. Join us as we dive into 5 of the most disturbing deaths caused by common items, revealing how routine habits and harmless products turned into tragic, unexpected killers. These stories are truly haunting. On June 21, 2007, a tragic accident unfolded on a quiet Oakland sidewalk. What began as a simple evening stroll for a young couple ended in an unimaginable and deeply disturbing death, one that veteran police officers described as unlike anything they had ever witnessed. At 24 years old, Humberto Hernandez had recently come to the United States with his wife. The young couple lived modestly in a trailer not far from the 900 block of 98th Avenue. Humberto had just purchased flowers and cherries for his wife, a small but sweet gesture of affection, and the two were walking together to a nearby restaurant for dinner. It was a brief walk, one they had likely made before in an area close to their home. Humberto was a few steps ahead of his wife as they made their way along the sidewalk. At around 5:52 p.m., tragedy struck the unsuspecting young couple in a way no one could have predicted. A 45-year-old woman driving a 2007 Ford Escape northbound on 98th Avenue reportedly experienced a tire blowout. Losing control of the sport utility vehicle, she veered onto the sidewalk, slamming into a fire hydrant. The impact was so powerful that it dislodged the 200-pound hydrant from its base. The released water pressure and the force of the crash combined to launch the iron object into the air at a violent speed and angle. All of a sudden, Humberto was in the line of fire. He was walking just 10 to 12 feet away from the hydrant. Naturally, he had heard the crash and turned his head. In that brief, devastating moment, the hydrant struck him in the back of the head. Police were uncertain if it bounced off the pavement before hitting him, but the force was catastrophic. The hydrant continued its deadly path after the initial impact, ricocheting off a fence and landing another 20 feet away. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but Humberto was pronounced dead at the scene at 6:08 p.m., just 18 minutes after he was struck. His wife, though physically unharmed, was left alone and devastated. Authorities learned that she had no relatives in the area, no financial resources, and now faced the unimaginable loss of her husband with no support system around her. Veteran officers, some with more than 2 decades of experience, expressed disbelief at the nature of the accident. Lieutenant Fausto Malara, a 25-year veteran, said he had witnessed many collisions involving fire hydrants, but had never seen one result in a fatality like this. Motorcycle officer Eddie Bermudez, leading the investigation, called it a 1,000,000-to-1 chance, emphasizing how a difference of just a single step could have meant Humberto's survival. The incident left a deep impact not only on the community but also on the officers themselves, who struggled to reconcile the idea that an object meant to save lives could cause such a violent and sudden death. Fire hydrants, which are meant to help in ensuring public safety, are not objects that people expect to become deadly projectiles. The officers noted how impossible it would be for an ordinary person to lift one, yet here one had been flung with lethal force. Investigators worked to determine the full circumstances of the crash. The driver stated that she was not using a cell phone or otherwise distracted, and the tire blowout was cited as the cause. However, authorities had not yet confirmed her account as of the following day, leaving questions lingering over the chain of events. In a world where traffic deaths are sadly routine, the death of Humberto Hernandez stands out for its shocking randomness and cruelty. He had no chance to react, no chance to escape. In a fleeting instant, a life full of love and hope was ended by an object meant to serve and protect the public. The tragedy is an unusual reminder of how fragile life can be, and how sometimes the most ordinary moments can be pierced by devastating, unforeseeable horror. Helen Davy's death came as a shock to those who knew her and raised urgent questions about the hidden dangers posed by everyday household furniture. What began as a routine day ended in a tragedy so disturbing in its simplicity that it prompted immediate warnings from coronial authorities and urgent calls for regulatory action. Helen, a 39-year-old mother of 2 from Seaham County, Durham, was a vibrant and independent woman. Born in Hartlepool, she had built a life around her family and her passion for beauty therapy. Running her own beauty business all dolled up from her modern terraced home, Helen was known for her strong character, loyalty, and deep devotion to her children, 19-year-old Elizabeth, known as Betty, and 11-year-old George. Her friends and family thought of her as fiercely supportive, someone who made her children feel as if they always had a friend and protector at their side. On June 7, 2023, tragedy struck in the most unimaginable way. Helen was relaxing at home when she leaned over the storage compartment of her gas piston Ottoman-style bed. Without warning, the bed's mattress platform descended heavily. One of the two gas lift pistons designed to assist in safely raising and lowering the mattress had failed. Instead of moving slowly or remaining in place, the platform came crashing down, pinning Helen's neck against the upper surface of the bed's base. Trapped and unable to free herself, Helen suffocated. Her daughter Betty returned home to a nightmare, finding her mother lying on her back with her head caught under the bed. Betty immediately tried to lift the heavy platform, but the defective piston meant the bed no longer had a soft close function and resisted her desperate efforts. With tremendous effort, Betty managed to lift it enough to wedge her foot under it and drag her mother clear. However, Helen's face was already blue, and a clear indent was visible on her neck from the frame. Despite frantic attempts to revive her and the swift arrival of paramedics, Helen was pronounced dead at the scene. An inquest into Helen's death concluded it was an accident. Coroner Jeremy Chipperfield identified the cause as positional asphyxia due to mechanical failure of the bed. His findings, however, went beyond the specifics of this one tragedy. In a Prevention of Future Deaths report, Chipperfield warned that gas lift mechanisms, when defective, present a risk to life. He emphasized that unless action is taken to address the dangers posed by these beds, more deaths could occur. Chipperfield's report was sent directly to the Secretary of State for Business and Trade, as well as to the Office for Product Safety and Standards. In it, he made clear that the failure of one gas piston was a critical factor in the accident and that preventive measures must be considered urgently. The Department for Business and Trade responded, offering condolences and promising to carefully consider the coroner's findings. Helen's death is especially haunting because it involved an object most people consider safe and benign. Gas piston beds are common, sold widely for their convenience and storage efficiency. That such an ordinary household item could become a deadly trap adds a chilling dimension to the tragedy, making clear how hidden mechanical failures can have fatal consequences. The aftermath for Helen's family has been one of profound grief. Betty shared her heartbreak publicly, describing her mother as her best friend from day one. She spoke of the unbearable pain of not having Helen by her side and the longing for just one more moment together. For George, who was only 11, the loss was equally devastating. The tragedy has also cast a shadow of fear among the public, highlighting a broader issue of product safety oversight. Helen's death showed that even the most familiar objects can turn deadly, and that vigilance, both in manufacturing and regulation, is essential to prevent further heartbreak. Helen's story is a devastating example of how quickly and cruelly life can change and why urgent action is needed to protect others from a similar fate. In September 2024, Carter Walsh was a lively 2-year-old from Wigan, Greater Manchester. But what began as a joyful family day out quickly turned into an unimaginable nightmare, one that no one could have prevented. Despite his young age, Carter Walsh had already faced challenges early in life. Born into foster care, he was eventually reunited with his mother, Samantha Walsh, who fought hard to bring him home. Since then, Carter and Samantha had been inseparable. She described him as her best friend, the light of her life, and a boy whose charm and happiness touched everyone he met. Carter's family members often spoke of his boundless energy and loving spirit. His young life was filled with the kind of affection and attention every child deserves. But everything changed on September 18, 2024. The day had started with happiness. Carter spent the morning with family, enjoying lunch at a Carvery restaurant before visiting horses belonging to his grandmother. Photographs taken that day show Carter beaming with excitement, gazing up at one of the horses, a final, heartbreaking image of an innocent boy experiencing pure joy. After the outing, Carter returned home with his cousin Saskia Prescott and the family's landlord, who was present to repair the boiler. Samantha had briefly stepped out, trusting that her son was safe. In the living room, Carter and Saskia danced together to the children's program Cocomelon, a routine part of his playful afternoons. Without warning, the marble fireplace, along with a heavy flat-screen television resting upon it, collapsed. Investigations later revealed that the structure had not been secured to the wall and had been left resting after recent carpet work. Despite plans discussed by Carter's grandparents just the day before to secure the fireplace and television, time had run out. Detective Inspector Stuart Woodhead concluded that Carter may have grabbed the mantelpiece while dancing, and with minimal pressure, the entire structure gave way, crushing the toddler. The scene quickly turned desperate. Saskia and the landlord immediately called for an ambulance and attempted to resuscitate Carter as they awaited help. Meanwhile, Saskia phoned Samantha, initially trying to remain calm, telling her simply that Carter had banged his head. But as Samantha made her way home, it became clear something far more serious had happened. Her mother's grim warning to prepare herself confirmed her worst fears. When Samantha arrived, emergency services were still working on Carter. Despite their frantic efforts, he was transported by ambulance, not airlifted, a devastating sign to his medically experienced grandmother, to Wigan's Royal Albert Edward Infirmary. Carter was unconscious from the moment of the collapse and remained so throughout. Hospital staff fought to resuscitate him for 43 minutes, but the injury was unsurvivable. A single head injury had ended a young, vibrant life. Pathologist Dr. Jamie Robinson later confirmed that Carter's injury would have rendered him unconscious instantly, sparing him any prolonged suffering. However, for his family, the pain was profound and enduring. Samantha described how peaceful Carter looked when she saw him at the hospital. No visible bruises, just a small covered wound. The quiet image of her little boy was at odds with the horror of the accident that had taken him. In the aftermath, Samantha struggled to come to terms with the loss of her son. She could not remain in the home where the tragedy occurred and stayed with her sister. Returning to clean up the blood left a haunting memory she will carry forever. The inquest held at Bolton Coroner's Court ruled Carter's death an accident. The coroner, Peter Segei, expressed his condolences, acknowledging the unbearable loss. No criminal charges were brought. The incident was a tragic convergence of unfortunate circumstances. It is a cruel irony that something as ordinary as a fireplace, often associated with family, warmth, and safety, became the cause of unimaginable grief. Carter Walsh's short life was filled with love and joy, and his absence leaves a void that words cannot fully capture. In December of 2013, an unusual tragedy involving a small, easily overlooked object unfolded in southern Sweden. A man in his 60s met a cruel fate, and it all happened because of an everyday item which led to a chain of events no one could have foreseen. Little is known about the man beyond his age and location in southern Sweden. On the day of the tragedy, the man sat down for a meal that would mark the beginning of the end. He was eating pork tenderloin which had been prepared with toothpicks to hold it together. At some point during the meal, he unknowingly swallowed one. He felt no immediate discomfort, unaware that the sharp wooden splinter had lodged itself in his esophagus. But the following day, the man began to experience difficulty swallowing. Concerned, he sought help at the emergency department in Karlskrona. A nurse made note that the man had eaten meat fitted with toothpicks, but the doctor, despite conducting an examination and an X-ray, failed to detect any foreign object. Crucially, the information about the toothpicks was overlooked in the patient record. Reassured that there was nothing seriously wrong, the man was sent home. What followed was a slow and unseen deterioration. For 10 days, the toothpick remained lodged in his esophagus, causing damage that progressed in silence. When he returned to the hospital, his condition had worsened dramatically. This time, doctors discovered a hole in his esophagus, a serious infection, and alarming signs of systemic distress. The toothpick had not only pierced the delicate tissue, but had also severely weakened the walls of nearby blood vessels. Faced with a dire situation, the man was urgently referred to the University Hospital in Lund. There, surgeons operated to seal the damaged esophagus. However, complications continued. Despite the initial surgery, the weakening of the vascular structures led to the formation of a vascular hernia on one of the large vessels in his chest. The damage was profound and unrelenting. After surgery, he was transferred back to Karlskrona, but his condition remained unstable. He suffered another major hemorrhage, a catastrophic bleed resulting from the weakened vessel walls. He was rushed to the vascular clinic in Malmö in a desperate attempt to save his life. Sadly, despite the efforts of multiple medical teams, he succumbed to his injuries the following day. The incident, so disturbing in its origins and progression, was formally registered with Sweden's National Health Board, Socialstyrelsen, under a Lex Maria report, an official acknowledgement of serious medical incidents within the healthcare system. It underscored not only the fragility of the human body, but also the dangers posed by seemingly benign objects. The man's death is profoundly unsettling because it stemmed from something as common as a toothpick, an item used at countless meals without a second thought. His case is a haunting reminder of how a small oversight, both at the dinner table and in the hospital, can escalate into a fatal catastrophe. It also highlights the critical importance of meticulous attention in emergency care, where even minor details in a patient's history can mean the difference between life and death. What began as a fun night out for Atasha Graham ended in a devastating collapse and an unexplained loss, marking one of the most unusual and disturbing cases seen by investigators. Atasha's baffling fate raised troubling questions about everyday beauty products and their hidden dangers. It was 2012. 34-year-old Atasha Graham lived in London after moving from Jamaica and was one of 9 siblings. A lively and fun-loving woman, she was known for her vibrant spirit, her deep love for children, and the close bond she shared with her younger brother, Carlos. Atasha had worn hair extensions since the age of 20, often having them professionally applied in salons. She was in a happy relationship with her boyfriend, Fenton Johnson, a former soldier who credited her with helping him turn his life around. The couple had been trying to start a family, looking toward a hopeful future together. On the night of May 14th, Atasha had a takeaway meal with Fenton before heading to a nightclub in Peckham where Fenton was performing as a disc jockey. Throughout the night, Atasha drank Hennessy brandy mixed with Red Bull and danced for hours. There were no signs of distress. She appeared healthy, cheerful, and full of life. However, everything changed when they returned home around 6:30 a.m. As Atasha stepped through the doorway of their house in Lee, southeast London, she suddenly collapsed and stopped breathing. Fenton and a friend immediately called emergency services and attempted to revive her, following instructions given over the phone by 999 operators. Paramedics rushed Atasha to University Hospital Lewisham, but despite their efforts, she could not be saved. She died later that day. A post-mortem examination failed to find any abnormalities in Atasha's organs or evidence of drug or alcohol misuse. Her alcohol level was moderate and not nearly high enough to account for her death. There were also no signs of food allergies, and her consumption of jerk pork and Chinese food was ruled out as a contributing factor. However, pathologist Dr. Michael Heath identified a dangerously elevated level of tryptase in her blood, 178 micrograms per liter, far above the normal range of 2 to 14. This indicated she had suffered an anaphylactic shock, a massive allergic reaction. Dr. Heath suggested that the latex glue used to apply Atasha's hair extensions, or possibly the solvent used to remove old ones, could have been the trigger. He noted that while reactions to latex would typically occur within half an hour of exposure, traces of glue might have seeped into her bloodstream hours later, as she perspired heavily on the dance floor. Although he could not conclusively link the glue or any specific substance to her death, the possibility remained chillingly plausible. Disturbingly, Dr. Heath highlighted that he had seen multiple similar deaths recently, and that 10 to 20 such fatalities occur in the United Kingdom each year, with even more in the United States. The inquest, held at Southwark Coroner's Court, ultimately ruled that Atasha had died of natural causes, as the precise allergen that caused the fatal reaction could not be identified. Coroner Christopher Williams acknowledged the tragedy of not being able to provide the family with definitive answers. Atasha's death left her loved ones grappling with heartbreak and confusion. Fenton described her as a wonderful person who brought positivity and transformation into his life. Carlos, deeply affected, recalled their special bond, comparing them to twins. Her loss was made even more painful by the lack of closure, with family members haunted by the fact that a commonplace product, something as seemingly harmless as hair extension glue, may have contributed to her death. In a life full of vibrance and promise, it was an unthinkably small, everyday item that might have caused such a devastating end.